listening to Talk Amongst Yourself, the solo space where we pause, reflect, and get radically honest. I'm Kaylene. So I've taken a hiatus lately because I have felt like I don't know if I'm coming or if I'm going. I don't feel right. Truly, I feel like I'm on the wrong timeline. I can't believe the things that are occurring here in the United States and the ripple effect that this is having on the entire world. It's strange to me because there are lots of things that feel off balance for me. I went down the rabbit hole of the Mandela effect, which I'll talk about at another time. I've also discussed these feelings with other people, and I'm not the only person who's feeling this way. I just feel like we're stuck in the twilight zone without a way out right now. So I just wanted to clarify that and why I haven't done a show lately. It's just because my brain has not been in a good enough place to talk about the subject I'm about to talk about. In this episode isn't about sensationalizing addiction. It's about telling the truth of what it took me, what it revealed, and how close I came to losing myself, and how I found myself on a path and a trajectory that I never imagined, but also how I found my way back to center. You know, addiction rarely begins with chaos. It begins with escape. You know, those early moments of relief, numbness, the illusion of control, how everything in my life felt like it wasn't where it was supposed to be back then. Methamphetamine became a coping mechanism before it became a crisis for me. You know, I had subtle shifts, and I'll talk about those shifts as I go along, but I kind of want to start at the beginning. I had up and moved from where I lived to California, and I followed my partner out there, who was the first woman I had ever dated. And she had gotten a job out there, and I had followed her out there. And we ended up in Sacramento, California, which, if anybody knows, I swear that place is the methamphetamine capital of the United States. And when I got there, you know, I knew that we were towards the end of our relationship, but sometimes, you know, we all do things that we probably shouldn't do. We take that leap of faith, hoping that things will get better. And obviously they didn't get better. They didn't improve. I thought that maybe by going with her that I could patch up things and make them better between us. And at that point, I don't think there was anything that was going to make that better. And we ended up breaking up, and I ended up meeting someone else when I was out in Sacramento. I ended up going to the club out there a few times and saw this same person, and God dang, this woman could dance, man. I think that's what caught me. Not anything else about her, but that's what got me. And we started to talk, and we started to hang out, and I think she was seeing multiple people at the time. And I really, you know, this goes to show that you don't really know people. You know, we kind of just take that chance of getting to know people. And I don't think a lot of people do this anymore, where they just meet people on the street and end up together. Mostly everybody does this online dating stuff today, but I didn't. And when I ended up meeting her, I don't know how I found out. I think I just accidentally, I saw this, it was like a box. It was like a jewelry box next to her bed. And I was like, oh, I wonder what this is. You know, just being me, and anybody else probably would have done the same. And I just kind of opened it and looked at there, and I just stared at it. And there was a razor blade, a mirror, and some powdery stuff, rocks basically on there. And I was like, oh, shit. So I closed it. I didn't know a lick about meth. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what it was. I don't even think I had ever seen it at this point. And we continued to date, and finally I confronted her about it and I asked her about it and she told me about it. At this point I was still living with the ex as well, and also seeing a new person, so it turned out to be interesting. It was interesting. It turned out to be I don't know, it was weird. It was weird. I was living with the ex, but um dating someone new. And I found out that she she was doing meth. I also had some neighbors below me that also did meth. So it was quite a thing. And I'm one of those people who I'll try anything once, and if I like it, then I'll try it again. And one night we were out at the bar, and I recall the new person I was seeing stating how they didn't want me to try it because they didn't want me to go down that path. But me being the person I was just like, you can't stop me. I'm going to do what I want to do. And I decided to try it. I tried it. I don't really recall like how it made me feel. Like, I don't think it makes you feel high per se, but it kind of gives you a little bit of feeling of invincibility, but it also keeps you up, right? So you'll be doing things and it gets you to become like a busybody. So you'll be doing things and it feels like no time has passed. It'll feel like um, you're sitting there doing something for 5 minutes, and then 5 minutes later turns out to be 5 hours later. So that was the odd thing about it. And when I first started doing the drug, it was just like a weekend warrior thing for me. So I was like a weekend meth head, I guess. I don't know. And every weekend we used to go out all the time and hang out and go to the clubs. I was still at the age where clubs were the big thing to do, and it was fun. At least that's what I thought. It was fun. And there were shifts that were coming in, these subtle shifts that were creeping into my life during this time in the beginning when I first started doing it. Um, I I would sleep a lot less. My appetite was disappearing. Somehow, through any addiction I've ever had, which I'm not going to say that I've been addicted to drugs like several times because I haven't, but I I have a really good mindset where I do a lot of mind over matter things, and it usually works for me. And so I was able to keep a job, and what that's called is a functioning addict. A lot of people, just like a lot of people are functioning drunks, that's an old term, the functioning addict. I kept a job. I held a job this entire time that I was going through this, but it started to change who I was. And I would go through these spurts where I would only do it on weekends, and then I would do it during the week. And then I would stop and I'd do it during the weekends, and I would be like, "Oh, see, I can handle this. I can stop whenever I want to." And when you're in this type of lifestyle, your brain chemistry is obviously changing. Your thoughts aren't even remotely normal. Like, things that you would I would say things that you would never do, or things that you wouldn't think were normal, you start thinking. You're not even actually, I don't even know if you're thinking about it. I don't even know if you're thinking about it. For example, I'll tell you a story um, that happened, and I haven't shared this with very many people. There's about 3 people who know about this story, maybe 4. And now I'm going to share it with whoever I guess is listening. So one night we went to the club, and you know, we were good looking. We weren't bad looking. We had our makeup on. We were looking good. We were feeling good. We were probably higher than a kite. And we met this guy there. And, his brain went to, yes, 2 women at the same time, right? Like, he was like, yeah. And so we hung out with him all night. He got drunk while we were high, because usually the meth high overtakes the alcohol high. And so I could drink like a fish and not be drunk. I know that sounds weird, but that's how it goes. And we ended up going home with this guy, right? And the dude did have meth on him. He was, but he was pretty drunk. So I think he thought that he was going to score. Well, he ended up passing out before anything could even happen. And I am not going to lie to you. We rolled his ass. We rolled him. We took every cent that kid had. We took every drug that kid had. We were gone. We were out. I don't even think we ever seen him again after that. I'm pretty sure we never did. But yeah, we rolled him. And this is what I'm talking about, doing things that you wouldn't normally do. And in a million years, I would never think of doing something like that. But when you're on drugs, you're not thinking straight, especially when it's methamphetamine. I can't speak for coke. I can't speak for anything like that, but I surely can speak for meth. And your inhibitions just are not normal. You're not thinking, you know, about consequences. You're not thinking about behavior. You're not thinking about any of that. You're just not. That is something that today, even before that, today I would never even consider. Even before that, that was completely out of my character. But it seemed to be real easy for me while I was on these drugs. And, no one wakes up and decides that they're going to fall apart. But the edge of this drug, it arrived slowly. It wasn't fast for me. I did this for, this drug for 2 years. And what it offered me was emotional silence, distance, and detachment. Like I said, 5 hours turned into like 5 minutes for me. And so in my reality, it felt like time was slow, but it was actually fast. I don't even know how to explain that. Like I said, I could be sitting there on the computer, I could be surfing the web, and I'll think it's been 30 minutes and it's been freaking literally 30 hours. I was in the throes of addiction, and when you're taking methamphetamine, what it does is it takes the place of dopamine. And when you are dopamine depleted, you start to hallucinate, you start to do all kinds of stuff. And I was up, the most I'd ever been up was 5 days. And when I hit that 5th day, I started seeing things. Like things started moving, things started jumping around, and I was like, okay, yeah, it's time to crash and burn. And when you crash and burn from that type of high, you just crash and burn. I never ever put anything in my veins. I smoked it or I snorted it. It was one of those two things. It was never the whole vein thing. And I knew people who would shoot it up, and that just never appealed to me. I don't like needles. It's just not for me. But I will tell you that this drug is no joke. It gave me a false sense of clarity and power. And my relationship was volatile. It was emotionally volatile. It wasn't physically volatile. It never was. But it certainly was mentally volatile. And, it just wasn't normal. It wasn't normal. And, there were lots of outside things that were brought in. I mean, for God's sake, the girl's ex-girlfriend was living with us. It was just insane. And of course, I was cheated on continuously. And it just, whatever, it is what it is. It didn't really faze me. It didn't really bother me. I was in like a different world, a totally different world out there. And we had our dealer. We used to hang out with our dealer. We used to hang out with our dealer's wife. She was, I don't know, she'd just come over. We'd all just hang out. We never, you know, we never went without. We had people that would come over and be like, hey, can we get a 20 off you? Can we do this? And pretty soon I was selling my own drugs that I had just bought, or I was trading. A lot of people will trade. And I will never forget, this guy had a knife that I wanted. So I traded him for a $20 bag. And things like that were happening. Things like that were like normal for me. During those 2 years, I remember, talking to Sue Miles on the phone a lot. And, she used to get on my ass about going to treatment. And I was like, I got this. I'm good. I'm good. I always thought I had it. I remember going like months upon months not talking to my mom, but not realizing it had been months. You just lose track of time. It just doesn't, it almost doesn't exist. It's so weird. But I was able to keep my job. I kept my job for those whole 2 years I was there. For those whole 3 years I was there. But for the 2 years I was there and on this stuff, I had no issues. I kept the same job. I was always there. I did my job. I went to work. And I think maybe that's what made being a collector easy for me, because I had no sense of, I don't know, empathy. I didn't care, whatever. I just went in, did the job, and got out and got paid. But I remember getting really paranoid, getting real, real paranoid at times. And, I had this sense of internal bargaining. I think maybe it's kind of like when people get ill, only you're on drugs and you're thinking to yourself, I mean, in a sense, you're mentally ill. You're thinking to yourself, I can stop whenever I want, you know, um, it does become a shame cycle that keeps you quiet and isolated, unless you're around somebody that does what you're doing. And it's weird because I wasn't chasing a high, I was chasing an exit. I wasn't happy with who I was, who I'd become. Um, but it takes a toll on you. It took a toll on me. It took a toll on my body. It took a toll on me physically, mentally, but the physical toll that it took on me, was exhaustion, paranoia, just to the brink of depletion. Like about every couple days you would crash. And when you crashed, you would crash hard. But then you'd wake up and it was like this need that you had to have it. I cannot explain it. It's just, it's a need, it's a want, it's a need. And my body was probably signaling danger long before I thought about it. I'm lucky I have my teeth. A lot of people lose their teeth doing this stuff because you're basically putting home product chemicals in your body. It's awful. The stuff that people were making out of their houses is not the stuff that was created in Japan for the kamikaze pilots. Look it up. You'll see that's how they were able to be kamikaze pilots, because they were all on methamphetamine. But there was a big disconnect for me between probably what I felt and what others saw. I never really talked to people about what they saw. I mean, I know one of my friends told me that the last time we had talked before I moved back, she thought that was the last time we would be talking on the telephone. She thought the last time she would hear about me was that I'd be dead. And, she probably was right. She probably would have been right had I not had like this, I don't know, maybe call it come to Jesus point when my ex-girlfriend's ex, who was living with us, decided one day she was going to put a line on the table that was longer than any line I've ever done, any line I've ever seen. So I was like, it was just her and I. And I swear to God, when I think back to this, I swear she was trying to kill me. Anyway, there's this rule that if you drop a line on the table, you don't just do half, you do the whole line. And when I tell you, this line was probably 12 inches, easily. And the product on the table probably it was shit. It wasn't the good stuff. Let's just say that. And I went to do some, And I did maybe, I don't know, maybe as long as a dollar bill. And I will never forget when I lifted my head up and she looked at me and she's like, nah. She's like, you can't just do, you have to finish it all, period. And, me being the person I am, I got you. All right. Did the whole line. She did one actually probably just as long. And that night, Cynthia was her name, is her name. We got into this fight, this argument, and she had left. And while she was gone, believe me, it was probably the best thing she could have ever done, because I think had she had come back, I probably would have killed her. And we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. I'd be in prison right now for murder. So I was pissed. I was on another plane of anger that I cannot explain to you. I was paranoid, I was angry, and I happened to come across this letter after her ex had left that was written to her from her ex that I found in the trash. Don't ask. When you're on drugs, you do stupid shit. So don't ask why I was going through the trash. It must have been something that put me over the edge and made me a little bit paranoid. So I pulled this letter out, and it was to Cindy, and it was about how Cindy shouldn't be with me, how she should be with her, and how she can't stand every time when we're together. And I was livid. I lost myself. I lost myself within that. I was so angry and I was so paranoid, and I was thinking that there were more letters and that there were hidden letters, and I probably tore that house up from limb to limb. It was so bad that I was outside digging holes in the yard. And like I said, not very many people know this story. I was outside and I was digging holes in the ground, and I was digging through planters, and I was looking for letters. I was looking for evidence, and I was looking for more letters, and I looked through every single paper in the house. But while I was digging through these planters, one of them was a cactus, maybe two of them. And so, as you can imagine, my hands were completely swollen. There were like cacti needles in my hands. I didn't even really know it. I just know that my hands were swollen and they were bloody, and it was crazy. And so, as I was coming down, I started to realize how out of control I was, and how all I could think about, if I see her, I'm going to kill her. I'm going to kill her. But as I was coming down, I started to realize that I was completely out of control. So there was a fight in my head going back and forth that was kind of like, what are you doing? Look at what you're doing to yourself. Look at what you have become. Look at what you are. And for some reason, something in me clicked, and I realized that I was no longer in control. I was no longer in control of myself. I was no longer in control of my thoughts. It was something else, and I cannot explain it, but something came over me, and I knew that I was in danger. I was not only in danger physically, I was in danger mentally. And I also knew that the people around me were probably in danger. And so this happening went from all night. I probably took that line the day before, I don't even know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I didn't start coming down till like 3 o'clock in the morning, maybe four. Um, what pulled me back? I don't know that it was a miracle, but I do know that it was a decision. You know, Cindy got home at about 5:30 in the morning, and by the time she got home, I was already like, oh, I was already okay. I was down. I was freaked out. I was that whole ordeal of being with myself in such a space made me go, this is it. This is it. I am on an edge that I know that I cannot walk back from if I don't walk back today. And I knew that day that that was it for me. And so what happened was that day, I remember it was a Friday, and basically I crashed and burned. But when I woke up, it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I had to make a series of choices. So I was like, okay, so I had insurance for myself because I still had a job. So I called Kaiser. I was like, I need help. There's nothing I could do about it. And this is what I was told. We can't get you into a program until Monday. It's Friday afternoon. And I was thinking to myself, how the hell am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get myself through a weekend in a house with a bunch of goddamn meth heads? The person I was dating, meth 24/7. The people that were in our garage on the other side of the wall through a door, meth heads tinkering around with the freaking car in the garage. There was meth everywhere in this house. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I was like, how am I going to make it through? To this day, I can't tell you how I made it through till Monday. I don't know. I walked out, I told my girlfriend, I was like, I'm done. I'm quitting. You guys cannot be doing this shit around the house anymore. That's it. I walked out to the garage. Everybody's out there getting high. I just turned around, went back in. I don't remember if I left. I don't really remember what happened. I mean, it's been over 20 years, but I just knew that I wasn't going to make it through that weekend. I was scared as hell, but somehow I made it through that weekend. I made it to Kaiser Monday morning. When I got there, we talked about treatment. So they were doing like a couple things. When I got there, Kaiser was doing in-house and outpatient. So they were doing inpatient and outpatient treatment, and the computer picked what I was going to do, because at the time they were kind of doing like, it was kind of experimental and whatever. So the computer picked outpatient for me. And I will tell you, I was scared. I was scared, but I did what I was supposed to. I went to outpatient all day long. It was like going to school. So I had to get out of work. I did get an excuse. I went out on FMLA for 30 days. I had to go to, I think, 3 meetings a day, or 2 meetings a day, I think, or maybe 3. I don't remember. But I was like, it was like school. So I was there from like, or like work, actually. It was during my work hours. So I was there from like, I don't even remember, 8 to 5 every day. And it was every day, but on weekends. And then on weekends, I had to go, that's the days that I had to go to three meetings a day, because they needed to make sure that we were keeping up. And actually, I'm sorry, it wasn't 30 days. I was out of work for 30 days, but my program was only 21 days. And one of the things they tell you is don't move, don't do all these big changes immediately, blah, blah, blah. So I got in, I kept up with my treatment. I quit doing drugs. I was adamant about not having it in my house. Do you think that worked? Probably not. So after I got out of treatment and I kept going to my meetings, I didn't stop. I kept going. And I decided I was leaving. So I told my current girlfriend at the time, I said, I'm leaving. I said, I'm going home. So either you can go home with me or you can stay here. I don't care which. You choose. Well, what do you think she was going to choose? Of course, she was going to go with me because she had no means. She never worked a regular job. She didn't pay for shit. And, she ended up going with me. She actually was a hairdresser. She had a license, but, doing drugs. And she was still very much into those drugs. And, somehow I convinced her to go to treatment before I decided to come home. And she had gone into treatment, and the computer for her picked in-house. She was in-house for 3 days and was gone after that. She could not handle it. She couldn't handle it. She wasn't ready, and I always had this dumb notion that I could fix her, that I could change her. But that was my lesson. My lesson was that you can't change people. You can't, it's not your job. You know, they're going to be okay. It's not your fault. They're not going to fall apart without you. And that's exactly what a lot of us think that are involved with people that are addicts. We think that it's our job to fix them, and it's not. It is not. I will tell you that. It took me a long time to learn that, but that was my lesson. And I learned it during this relationship, that I'm not here to take care of people, that I'm not here to see you through, that nothing I can say or do is going to change you and make you do. That's just how it is. And that was my biggest lesson from this whole thing. I did end up relapsing about a year later. So I got home in 2003. I relapsed literally on my 1 year anniversary. And then I haven't. And what they say if you pick it up, you do it again, you're going to be right back where you are. I was, and I didn't like the feeling. And I was like, nope, I'm done. And I haven't touched it since. Haven't looked at it since. We're now in 2026. This was back in 2004. Haven't looked at it since. So I'm better off for it. And not everybody can do what I did. 6% of people get off of meth. 6%. You know how low that is? That's insane. But I did. I pushed through it. It wasn't glamorous. I didn't heal all at once. I just stopped abandoning myself. And if you can take care of yourself, if you can see the struggles of addiction within you, then you can stop. I couldn't have stopped without help at that time. Honestly, I don't think I could have. But I was pretty strong. I'm a strong person. And when I did stop, it was the best thing I ever did for myself and probably for everyone around me. And so if you've ever struggled with addiction, me too. If you've ever used something to escape, to quiet the noise, to survive, me too. If you've ever found yourself closer to the edge than you meant to be, you're not alone. You're not broken. You're human, and you're awake. Naming the truth of where you've been is part of reclaiming your power. You don't have to forgive yourself all at once. You don't have to heal all at once. You just have to stop abandoning yourself. And that's what I did. I stopped abandoning Kaylene. I'll be back next Sunday. Until then, stay soft, stay brave, and stay grounded, and keep talking amongst yourself.